are millennials locked out for the inevitable future, or is there some light at the end of the tunnel in a relativistically short time?
In terms of the rental market, I would say there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and we're already starting to see it now. I think a lot of people who are listening to this will have experienced, trying to rent in the past few years, and being really desperately competing for units if you had to move or go to a new city, and there just not being that much available. Now there's more choice at a lower price, which is that's good for everyone. Even I think on the opposite side, like on the property owner side, I think it's better to have a more stable market that's not swinging wildly from one side to another. Again, it's the people who are the most speculative, the most leveraged, who are going to be washed out in that. Now, in terms of home ownership, I think that's going to be a longer process. Like it was in the kind of mid to late 2010s that I thought the bubble went from being a concern for people who had bought at really high prices to being a concern for the whole economy. And we're going to kind of have to revisit a lot of assumptions that we have in our economy and our culture about what housing is for, right? Like we spent a whole generation saying that housing should be your retirement plan, not just in terms of where you're going to live, but also in how you're going to fund your retirement, which is a big, big problem, right? It's you can't do that for more than one generation because somebody has to pay for it, right? And
Bill
then you
comes
have the
due.
next
Yeah.
generation that paid for your retirement and now they have to pay for their own retirement as well, and it just stacks up and stacks up, right? So in terms of home ownership, I think it's going to be more difficult. It's going to be a slower process. People really don't like to lose money on real estate, so they're not going to be cutting prices super fast unless they absolutely have to sell. A lot of people who already have a mostly paid off home are going to prefer to hang on to it for the longer term. So in that sense, I think that's much farther away. But the good news to me is like I spent quite a few years, even when I could have bought a place, just renting and saving money and investing it. Right? It's home ownership is not the only way to build equity. In fact, I think home ownership doesn't build equity. What builds equity is it's not your mortgage; it's paying off your mortgage, right? So what builds equity is you go to work, you make money, and then you use that to pay down this debt that you have, right?
Historically, if you
Whereas
throw in the
renting,
S&P 500 or something else, you're probably in a much safer long-term position.
exactly. I mean, the nice thing about renting is that you don't have debt hanging over your head, right? If you have the cash flow coming in and you have money that you're investing, you're improving your financial situation every month, regardless of what's happening in the market, right? As opposed to, we have people who bought, you bought in 2019, which worked out great. People who bought in 2022 have had all of their equity wiped out, right? If you look in Toronto, the latest data is that prices are down about 25% from the peak, right? So if you bought a place with 5% down, you've lost 500% of that investment.
That's immense. Like that's a lot.